The silence in the Galactic Council chambers was absolute. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vraxian Empire stared at the empty seat where the human representative had sat for the past 50 years. The polished metal surface reflected the overhead lights, creating an almost accusatory gleam that seemed to point directly at him. "They're really gone," whispered Counselor Yithana from the Celestial Communion. Her translucent form flickered with nervous energy, something the ethereal beings rarely displayed. "The humans have withdrawn from all treaties, all trade agreements, everything." Zethkar's forearms moved restlessly across his ceremonial robes. As the current council speaker, he had presided over the vote that led to this moment. The vote that had seemed so logical, so necessary just 3 months ago. Now, the weight of that decision pressed down on him like the crushing depths of his homeworld's oceans. "Perhaps it's for the best," growled General Korthak of the Saurian Military Collective. His reptilian features twisted into what might have been satisfaction. The humans were always too unpredictable. Too aggressive. The galaxy will be more peaceful without their constant interference. But, even as he spoke, Korthak's voice lacked conviction. The reports flooding in from across the galaxy told a different story. The first signs had appeared within days of humanity's formal withdrawal from galactic civilization. The Nexus trade routes, which had operated smoothly for centuries, were experiencing unprecedented delays. Ships that had relied on human-maintained navigation beacons found themselves lost in the vast emptiness between stars. The sophisticated early warning systems that protected merchant vessels from pirates and spatial anomalies had gone dark, one by one. The Kepler Freight Consortium lost another convoy yesterday, reported economic advisor Nyl Elith, her insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. That's the 7th this month. Their insurance rates have tripled, and several major shipping companies are suspending operations on the outer rim routes. Zethkar pulled up the holographic display showing galactic trade statistics. The numbers painted a grim picture. Trade volume had dropped by 30% in just 3 months. But it wasn't just the economic impact that worried him. It was everything else that was starting to unravel. The humans had been subtle in their integration into galactic society. They hadn't demanded positions of power or tried to dominate other species. Instead, they had quietly made themselves indispensable in ways that most council members had never fully understood or appreciated. On Rigel Prime, the massive atmospheric processors that kept the industrial world's air breathable were failing. The maintenance contracts had all been handled by human engineering firms. Now, with their departure, the complex systems were breaking down faster than local technicians could repair them. The planetary government had issued evacuation warnings for 3 major cities. In the Andromeda sector, the deep space monitoring stations that tracked potentially dangerous asteroids and rogue planets had stopped receiving updates. The humans had operated a vast network of automated probes and sensors, sharing their data freely with all council member species. Without that early warning system, entire star systems were now flying blind through space. "We could handle these problems ourselves," insisted Counselor Thrace from the Mechanoid Assembly. His cybernetic voice carried no emotion, but his optical sensors flickered rapidly, a sign of intense processing. "We simply need time to adapt our systems." "Time we may not have," Zethkar replied, studying another disturbing report. The Terminus Station incident was just the beginning. Terminus Station had been humanity's largest civilian outpost, a massive space habitat that served as a hub for scientific research and cultural exchange. When the humans withdrew, they had offered to transfer control of the station to the council. It had seemed like a generous gesture. The problems started immediately. The station's advanced life support systems required constant adjustment and calibration. Human technicians had made it look effortless, but the reality was far more complex. Within weeks, sections of the station began experiencing environmental failures. The council's best engineers couldn't solve the problems fast enough. Then, the evacuation began. 50,000 non-human residents had called Terminus Station home. Scientists, artists, traders, and their families all forced to abandon their lives as the habitat slowly died around them. The images of families carrying their possessions through failing corridors had dominated galactic news feeds for days. The humans knew this would happen, accused Counselor Vashti from the Psion Collective. Her mental projections carried waves of anger and frustration. They engineered this crisis to make us suffer for rejecting them. Zethkar's skin flushed a deep purple, a sign of agitation among his species. "No," he said firmly. "I've studied the technical reports. The humans genuinely tried to transfer their knowledge. We just couldn't understand it fast enough. It was a humbling admission. The Galactic Council represented dozens of advanced civilizations, species that had mastered faster than light travel, quantum computing, and bioengineering. Yet somehow, in just a few centuries of galactic membership, the humans had become essential to the functioning of interstellar civilization. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The vote to impose restrictions on human expansion had been motivated by fear of their rapid technological advancement and cultural influence. Many council members worried that humanity's aggressive nature and innovative thinking would eventually dominate galactic affairs. They were changing too fast, muttered General Korthak, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Their colonies were spreading beyond approved sectors. Their technology was advancing at an unprecedented rate. The other species couldn't keep up. So we decided to slow them down, Zethkar said bitterly. We imposed development quotas, restricted their access to certain technologies, limited their colony ships. We thought we were protecting galactic stability. The human response had been swift and decisive. Ambassador Sarah Chen had stood before the full council and delivered a statement that still echoed in Zethkar's memory. Humanity came to the stars seeking friends and partners. If the galaxy prefers to see us as a threat, then perhaps it's time for us to return to the darkness between stars. We will not fight you. We will simply leave. And they had. Within months, every human colony, outpost, and facility beyond the Sol system had been abandoned. Not destroyed or damaged, simply left behind, clean and empty. The humans had withdrawn to their homeworld and the immediate solar system, cutting all contact with galactic civilization. The economic projections are getting worse, Nylleth reported, her voice barely above a whisper. If current trends continue, we're looking at a complete collapse of the outer rim economies within 2 years. The core worlds won't be far behind. Zethkar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. The humans hadn't struck back in anger. They hadn't declared war or threatened retaliation. They had simply removed themselves from the equation and, in doing so, revealed just how dependent the galaxy had become on their presence. Space exploration had slowed to a crawl without human survey ships and their fearless crews. Scientific advancement had plateaued without human researchers and their unconventional approaches to problem solving. Even entertainment had suffered. Human stories, music, and art had become beloved throughout the galaxy, and their absence left a cultural void that no other species seemed able to fill. We need to send a delegation to Earth, Zethkar announced suddenly. The words surprised even him, but, once spoken, they felt inevitable. We need to apologize and ask them to return. The chamber erupted in protests. Several council members spoke at once, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. General Korthak's roar rose above the rest. We will not grovel before a species barely out of their home system. Then, we will watch our civilization collapse around us, Zethkar replied coldly. Because that's what's happening. The humans weren't just members of our society, they were the glue holding it together. And we were too proud and too blind to see it. Counselor Yithana's form solidified as she focused her energy. Even if we wanted to reach out to them, we don't know if they would listen. They've ignored every communication attempt since the withdrawal began. Then, we keep trying, Zethkar said firmly. Because the alternative is watching everything we've built crumble into dust. As the council continued to debate, reports kept flooding in from across the galaxy. Another colony world was experiencing critical infrastructure failures. A major research facility had been forced to shut down due to system incompatibilities. Trade ships continued to disappear in the poorly monitored outer regions. Zethkar stared again at the empty human seat. In trying to control humanity's rise, the council had ensured its own fall. The humans had built no monuments to their importance, claimed no special privileges, demanded no recognition. They had simply done what they did best: solve problems, explore new frontiers, and bring impossible ideas to life. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was learning a painful lesson about the difference between strength and dependence, between leadership and partnership. Humanity's departure wasn't an act of vengeance, it was a mirror, reflecting the Council's own fears and inadequacies back at them. The realization hit Zethkar like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just withdrawn from galactic society. They had taken with them something far more valuable than technology or economic partnerships. They had taken hope, the belief that different species could work together to build something greater than themselves. Without that hope, the galaxy felt smaller, colder, and infinitely more fragile. And, somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity waited in silence, leaving the rest of the galaxy to face the consequences of their choice. The empty seat seemed to grow larger in the dim chamber light, a void that no amount of debate or desperation could fill. The galaxy had made its decision 3 months ago. Now it would learn to live with the consequences, or die trying. Captain HFY guided his patrol vessel through the debris field that had once been the Harmony Station. The massive commercial hub had served as a crossroads for 7 major trade routes, bustling with activity from dozens of species. Now it drifted lifeless through space, its corridors dark and empty. "Another ghost station," muttered his tactical officer, a young crystalline named Zephyr. "That's the 5th one this month." HFY's mandibles clicked in what humans had taught him was called irony. Strange how even his thoughts still referenced human customs. 6 months had passed since their departure, yet their influence lingered everywhere like phantom limbs on an amputated body. "Run a full structural scan," he ordered. "Check for survivors, but I doubt we'll find any." The scan results confirmed his pessimism. Harmony Station was completely abandoned, its automated systems slowly failing without maintenance. The station's massive rotating sections had stopped turning, leaving the artificial gravity generators struggling to compensate. Soon, even those would fail, and the entire structure would become another navigational hazard drifting through space. "Sir," Zephyr's voice carried confusion, "I'm detecting something unusual in the station's central hub." "It appears to be a message beacon?" HFY ordered his ship closer to the station's core. There, attached to the main communications array, was a small device that definitely hadn't been part of the original station design. It was sleek, elegant, and unmistakably human in origin. "Patch it through," HFY commanded. A holographic image flickered to life on the bridge. It showed a middle-aged human woman with short gray hair and tired eyes. HFY recognized her immediately, Commander Elena Vasquez, who had been the station administrator until the human withdrawal. "If you're receiving this message," Commander Vasquez began, "then Harmony Station has likely been abandoned for several months. I'm recording this as we complete our final evacuation procedures. I want to make something clear to whoever finds this place." The commander's expression hardened. "We didn't want to leave. This station wasn't just a job for us, it was home. We lived here, worked here, raised our children here alongside yours. But, when the Galactic Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to operate freely, they made it clear we weren't welcome as equals." HFY felt his respiratory slits tighten. He had voted in favor of the restrictions. At the time, it had seemed reasonable. "The maintenance protocols for this station are stored in the central computer," Commander Vasquez continued. "Complete technical manuals, repair procedures, everything you need to keep this place running. We've left detailed instructions in 17 different languages. We hoped that someone would take over and keep the dream alive." The hologram paused, and Commander Vasquez seemed to look directly at HFY. "But we both know that won't happen, don't we? Because maintaining a place like this isn't just about following procedures. It requires a particular kind of stubborn optimism that humans seem to have in abundance. The belief that different species can work together, that the galaxy is big enough for all of us to thrive." The message ended, leaving the bridge in silence. HFY stared at the empty space where the hologram had been, feeling a weight settle in his chest that had nothing to do with artificial gravity. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command." Admiral Kestar's image appeared on the main screen. The veteran commander's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of strain and fatigue. "Captain HFY, what's your status?" "Harmony Station is completely abandoned, Admiral. No survivors, but the structure is still sound. The humans left maintenance instructions." "Irrelevant," Admiral Kestar replied curtly. "We don't have the resources to maintain empty stations. Mark it for salvage and proceed to your next assignment." HFY's mandibles twitched. "Sir, with respect, Harmony Station serves 7 major trade routes. Abandoning it completely will force merchant ships to add weeks to their journey times." "Then, they'll add weeks to their journey times," the Admiral snapped. "In case you haven't been watching the reports, Captain, we have bigger problems than inconvenienced merchants. The Zelthian border conflict has escalated again. The Zelthian situation was indeed troubling. The long-standing territorial dispute between the Zelthian Republic and the Vraxian Empire had flared up again, with border skirmishes becoming increasingly violent. For decades, human peacekeepers had helped mediate such conflicts, offering creative solutions that both sides could accept. What's the current situation? Thrix VA asked. Both sides are mobilizing their fleets. The Zelthians claim the Vraxians attacked a civilian transport. The Vraxians say it was carrying military supplies. Without neutral arbitrators, every incident becomes an excuse for escalation. Thrix VA understood the implication. Human diplomats had possessed an unusual talent for finding middle ground in seemingly impossible situations. They approached conflicts with a combination of empathy and pragmatism that other species found difficult to replicate. Orders, sir? Patrol the neutral zone between Zelthian and Vraxian space. Try to keep the shooting to a minimum, but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. We can't afford to be seen as taking sides. The transmission ended, leaving Thrix VA with a familiar sense of inadequacy. Human peacekeepers would have immediately contacted both sides, arranged ceasefire talks, and probably found some creative solution that addressed everyone's concerns. All he could do was fly back and forth, hoping that nobody started a war. As his ship departed Harmony Station, Thrix VA reflected on how much had changed since the human departure. The galaxy wasn't at war, exactly, but it felt closer to the edge of chaos than it had in centuries. The Frontier Exploration Initiative had been suspended after the loss of 3 survey ships in unexplored regions. Human explorers had possessed an almost supernatural ability to avoid dangerous spatial phenomena and hostile alien encounters. Without them, exploration had become prohibitively risky. Scientific collaboration between species had also suffered. Human researchers had a gift for translating complex ideas between different types of minds. They could explain crystalline quantum theories to silicon-based beings, or help plasma entities understand organic biochemistry. Without their bridging influence, academic conferences had devolved into incomprehensible exhibitions of species-specific knowledge. Captain, his navigator interrupted his thoughts, we're approaching the Zelthian border. I'm detecting multiple warship signatures. The tactical display showed the grim reality of the situation. 12 Zelthian cruisers faced off against an equal number of Vraxian battleships, with barely 1,000,000 kilometers separating the two fleets. Weapons were charged, shields were raised, and tension crackled across the communication frequencies. Open a channel to both fleet commanders, Thrix VA ordered. Let's see if we can talk them down. The next several hours tested every diplomatic skill Thrix VA possessed. The Zelthian commander insisted that the Vraxians had attacked without provocation. The Vraxian commander claimed they were responding to terrorist activities. Both sides demanded justice, neither was willing to back down, and Thrix VA found himself playing referee in a dispute he barely understood. It was exhausting, frustrating work. Every time he thought he was making progress, another accusation would fly across the void, reigniting tensions. He found himself wondering how human diplomats had made it look so effortless. The answer came to him during a brief lull in the arguments. Human diplomats hadn't focused on the specific details of each dispute. Instead, they had concentrated on the underlying needs and fears that drove the conflict. They asked questions like, what are you really trying to protect, and what would have to change for you to feel secure? Thrix VA tried that approach, and, gradually, a different picture emerged. The Zelthians weren't really concerned about the attack transport, they were worried about Vraxian expansion into resource-rich systems they had discovered but couldn't yet exploit. The Vraxians weren't trying to seize territory, they were afraid that rapid Zelthian population growth would eventually squeeze them out of their traditional space. What if, Thrix VA suggested carefully, we arranged a joint development treaty? The Zelthians have exploration rights, the Vraxians provide industrial expertise, and both species share the benefits? Both commanders fell silent, apparently considering the proposal. For a moment, Thrix VA felt a surge of hope. Maybe he could resolve this crisis after all. Then, the Zelthian commander shook his head. Impossible. We don't have the legal framework for such an arrangement. The commercial codes, resource allocation treaties, dispute resolution mechanisms, it would take years to negotiate. The Vraxian commander agreed. Too complex. Too many opportunities for misunderstanding. We stick with the traditional territorial boundaries. Thrix VA's hope crumbled. A human diplomat would have spent the next several weeks crafting a detailed agreement that addressed every concern. They had a talent for creating new frameworks when existing ones weren't sufficient. All he could do was document the failed negotiation and hope that cooler heads would prevail. As he filed his report, Thrix VA realized something disturbing. The galaxy wasn't just missing human technology or economic contributions. It was missing human imagination, the ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. Humanity had brought a particular type of creative thinking to galactic civilization. They approached challenges with a combination of optimism and stubbornness that other species found both admirable and slightly insane. When faced with an impossible problem, humans didn't give up, they changed the rules until the problem became possible. Without that influence, the galaxy was becoming smaller, more rigid, more trapped in old patterns of thinking. Species that had coexisted peacefully for centuries were rediscovering ancient prejudices and territorial instincts. Cooperative ventures were failing as participants retreated into familiar, safe approaches. The communication system chimed with another priority message. This time it was from Galactic Council headquarters. All patrol vessels, be advised, the neutral zone monitoring network has experienced a 70% failure rate. Multiple early warning systems are offline. Commercial shipping is advised to avoid the following sectors. The list that followed included some of the galaxy's most important trade routes. Thrix VA stared at the message in growing dismay. The monitoring network was another human innovation, a system of automated sensors that tracked everything from pirate activity to spatial anomalies. Without constant maintenance, the delicate sensors were failing one by one. Soon, vast regions of space would be effectively unmapped and unmonitored. Ships would travel blind through areas that had been safe for centuries. The galaxy was becoming a more dangerous place with each passing day. Thrix VA thought about Commander Vasquez's message at Harmony Station. She had been right about human optimism being essential to maintaining galactic civilization. But it was more than just optimism, it was a fundamental belief that problems existed to be solved, that barriers existed to be overcome. That belief had infected other species during humanity's brief membership in galactic society. For a few decades, the galaxy had felt like it was expanding, growing, becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. Now it felt like it was contracting, becoming less than what it had been. The irony was bitter and complete. In trying to prevent human dominance, the Galactic Council had ensured human absence. And that absence was proving far more dangerous than their presence had ever been. In the darkness between stars, patrol ships maintained their lonely vigils over a civilization slowly forgetting how to dream. Dr. Lithana stood before the massive holographic display in the Emergency Operations Center, watching the real-time updates stream in from across the galaxy. Each blinking red indicator represented another crisis, another system failure, another piece of galactic civilization breaking down. The display had been mostly green when humanity was still part of the Galactic Council. Now, 18 months after their departure, red dominated the screen like a spreading infection. Update from the Kepler Mining Consortium, announced her assistant, a nervous Aquarian whose gill slits fluttered rapidly. The automated deep space mining platforms in the Theta sector have stopped responding. They're requesting immediate technical assistance. Add it to the list, Dr. Lithana replied wearily. The list had grown to over 3,000 critical infrastructure failures in the past month alone. Each one represented jobs lost, resources wasted, and another step toward galactic economic collapse. As the foremost expert on interspecies technological integration, Dr. Lithana had been tasked with finding solutions to the cascade of failures plaguing galactic civilization. It had seemed like a manageable problem at first. How difficult could it be to maintain systems that other species had built? The answer, she had learned, was devastatingly difficult. Human technology wasn't just advanced, it was fundamentally different in its approach to solving problems. Where other species built systems that followed rigid parameters, humans created adaptive networks that could respond to unforeseen circumstances. Their machines didn't just follow programming, they learned, evolved, and improvised. Doctor, called out senior technician Vorthe K from his monitoring station, we're getting reports of system failures on Cygnus Prime. The atmospheric processors are experiencing cascading shutdown sequences. Dr. Lithana pulled up the technical specifications for Cygnus Prime's life support systems. The planet was a marginal world, barely capable of supporting most galactic species without technological assistance. The atmospheric processors were sophisticated machines that balanced oxygen, nitrogen, and trace elements to create breathable air for the planet's diverse population. The problem was immediately apparent. The processors used human-designed adaptive algorithms that constantly adjusted their output based on thousands of variables, seasonal changes, population fluctuations, industrial emissions, even solar radiation levels. The systems had been designed to think, not just operate. "Can we send a technical team?" she asked. Vorthek's expression was grim. "We've already sent 3 teams in the past 6 months. Each one managed to restart the processors, but the systems keep developing new problems faster than we can solve them. The local engineers are requesting permanent evacuation assistance." Another world lost. Dr. Lithana marked Cygnus Prime as a probable evacuation scenario and moved on to the next crisis. There were always more crises. The communication panel lit up with an incoming priority transmission. Council Speaker Zethkar's image appeared on the main screen, looking haggard and years older than he had 18 months ago. "Dr. Lithana, I need a comprehensive report on the infrastructure crisis for tomorrow's emergency session. How many critical systems are we dealing with?" She consulted her data tablets, though the numbers were burned into her memory. As of today, we have documented failures in 42% of human-designed systems galaxy-wide. Another 30% are showing signs of degradation. The cascade effect is accelerating. Cascade effect? Human systems were interconnected in ways we're still discovering, she explained. When one system fails, it often triggers problems in related systems. For example, the navigation beacon network relied on quantum entanglement links with the deep space monitoring stations. When the monitoring stations went offline, the navigation beacons began experiencing temporal drift errors. Zethkar's skin flushed purple with stress. How long do we have before complete systemic failure? Dr. Lithana had been dreading this question. Based on current trends, we're looking at the collapse of interstellar commerce within 2 years. The outer rim colonies will become isolated first, followed by the mid-range territories. The core worlds might maintain basic functionality for another decade, but even they will face severe limitations. And if we could contact humanity? If we could convince them to return? The damage is already extensive, Dr. Lithana admitted. Even with their help, it would take years to restore full functionality. Many systems have deteriorated beyond simple repair, they would need to be completely rebuilt. The transmission ended, leaving Dr. Lithana alone with her data and her growing sense of desperation. She had been studying human technology for over a year, and the more she learned, the more impressed and frustrated she became. Humans didn't just build machines, they created technological ecosystems. Each component was designed to work with countless others, creating networks of unprecedented complexity and capability. A simple mining robot might incorporate elements from 17 different technological disciplines, seamlessly integrating quantum processors, biological sensors, and crystalline memory matrices. The real breakthrough had come when Dr. Lithana realized that human technology was based on a fundamentally different philosophical approach. Most galactic species built systems to accomplish specific tasks efficiently. Humans built systems to handle unexpected challenges creatively. Dr. Vorthek called out again. "We're receiving a distress call from the research station at Proxima Nebula. They're reporting complete failure of their containment systems." Dr. Lithana felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Proxima Nebula Research Station was home to some of the galaxy's most dangerous experimental projects: artificial singularity studies, quantum consciousness research, and prototype weapons development. If their containment systems failed completely, the consequences could be catastrophic. "Pull up the technical specifications," she ordered. The holographic display showed the station's containment grid, a marvel of human engineering that used intersecting force fields to create perfectly isolated experimental chambers. The system could contain antimatter explosions, temporal anomalies, and even small black holes. It was also impossibly complex, with over 14 million individual components working in perfect harmony. "The primary control nodes are showing critical errors," Vorthek reported. "The backup systems are trying to compensate, but they're operating beyond safe parameters." Dr. Lithana studied the error patterns. The containment grid was designed with multiple redundancy layers, but each layer depended on quantum synchronized timing mechanisms that required constant adjustment. Without human technicians to perform the delicate calibrations, the entire system was slowly drifting out of phase. How long before total containment failure? At current degradation rates, approximately 18 hours. 18 hours to evacuate a research station that housed experiments too dangerous to abandon and too delicate to move quickly. Dr. Lythana began coordinating with the station's emergency response teams, but she knew it was a losing battle. Even if they managed to evacuate the personnel, the abandoned experiments would eventually breach containment. The galaxy was about to lose one of its most advanced research facilities to a problem that any human technician could have solved in an afternoon. As she worked through the evacuation procedures, Dr. Lythana reflected on the broader implications of humanity's departure. It wasn't just the loss of their technology that was crippling galactic civilization, it was the loss of their perspective. Humans had approached problems with a unique combination of audacity and pragmatism. Where other species saw impossible challenges, humans saw interesting puzzles. They had a gift for finding simple solutions to complex problems, often by asking questions that other species would never think to ask. More importantly, humans had been natural teachers. They hadn't hoarded their knowledge or demanded special privileges in exchange for their expertise. Instead, they had enthusiastically shared their innovations with any species willing to learn. They had established technical universities, published comprehensive research papers, and created training programs that were open to all. Dr. Lythana had attended several of those programs herself. Human instructors had a remarkable ability to explain complex concepts in terms that any species could understand. They used analogies, visual demonstrations, and hands-on experiments to make abstract theories concrete and accessible. Without those educational networks, technological progress across the galaxy had slowed to a crawl. Each species was retreating into their traditional areas of expertise, abandoning the cross-disciplinary collaboration that had driven innovation during humanity's membership in the Council. Dr. Vorthe K interrupted her thoughts. We're receiving another priority transmission. This one is from the Sol system. Dr. Lythana's breath caught in her respiratory chambers. It had been over a year since anyone had received any communication from human space. Most species had assumed that humanity had cut off all contact permanently. The transmission was brief and encrypted. When decoded, it revealed a simple message: we have been monitoring galactic communications. If immediate technical assistance is required for critical life safety systems, transmit specifications to the following frequency. Non-emergency communications will not be answered. It was a lifeline, but a limited one. The humans were apparently willing to provide emergency assistance, but they had made it clear that they weren't interested in resuming normal diplomatic relations. Dr. Lythana immediately began transmitting the specifications for the Proxima Nebula containment grid. Within an hour, a detailed technical solution arrived, complete with step-by-step repair procedures and safety protocols. The instructions were typically human, elegant, practical, and effective. The repair involved rerouting quantum synchronization signals through backup circuits that no one else had thought to use. It was a creative solution that required no new equipment, just a different way of thinking about the problem. Relay these instructions to Proxima Nebula immediately, Dr. Lythana ordered. As the hours passed, reports filtered in from the research station. The human solution worked perfectly. The containment grid stabilized, the experiments were secured, and the crisis was averted. Another disaster prevented by human ingenuity. But the incident highlighted a troubling reality. Humanity was still out there, still capable of solving the galaxy's problems. They were even willing to help in emergencies. But they had chosen to remain in self-imposed exile, leaving the rest of galactic civilization to struggle with challenges that they could easily address. Dr. Lythana began documenting every detail of the Proxima Nebula incident. If the Galactic Council was serious about convincing humanity to return, they would need to understand exactly what they were asking for. Humans hadn't just been another member species of the Council. They had been the galaxy's immune system, constantly working to identify and solve problems before they became critical. They had been the lubricant that kept the complex machinery of interstellar civilization running smoothly. Without them, that machinery was grinding itself to pieces. Every day brought new failures, new crises, new reminders of how much the galaxy had depended on human innovation and expertise. The question was whether there was still time to repair the damage. Both the technological damage to galactic infrastructure and the diplomatic damage that had driven humanity into isolation in the first place. As Dr. Lithana compiled her reports, red warning lights continued to blink across the holographic display. Each light represented another system failure, another step toward the fragmentation of galactic civilization. The cascade was accelerating, and time was running out. Somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity watched and waited. They had made their choice 18 months ago. Now the galaxy would have to decide whether it was willing to swallow its pride and ask for help. The alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never hosted a session like this one. Representatives from every member species sat in uneasy silence as Council Speaker Zethkar prepared to address the greatest crisis in galactic history. The holographic displays surrounding the chamber showed the devastating statistics that had brought them to this moment. 2 years after humanity's departure, galactic civilization was collapsing. Trade had dropped by 70%. 17 outer rim colonies had been abandoned due to infrastructure failures. The deep space exploration program had been suspended indefinitely after the loss of 12 survey vessels. Most alarming of all, 3 minor wars had erupted as species competed for diminishing resources and safe passage routes. Fellow beings of the Council, Zethkar began, his voice heavy with the weight of billions of lives, we face a choice that will determine the survival of our civilization. We can continue on our current path toward fragmentation and chaos, or we can acknowledge our mistakes and seek redemption. In the observation gallery, Dr. Lithana watched the proceedings with a mixture of hope and dread. She had spent the past 6 months preparing detailed reports on the infrastructure crisis, documenting every failure, every cascade effect, every sign that the galaxy was coming apart at the seams. The facts are undeniable, Zethkar continued, activating the central display. Humanity's withdrawal has revealed the extent to which our civilization had come to depend on their innovations, their problem-solving capabilities, and their unique approach to interspecies cooperation. The display showed a time-lapse visualization of galactic infrastructure over the past 2 years. Green indicators representing functional systems gradually turned red, spreading like a disease from the outer rim toward the core worlds. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Without human maintenance and innovation, the technological networks that bound the galaxy together were systematically failing. I call upon Ambassador Krelith of the delegation to Sol to present his report, Zethkar announced. A tall, crystalline being rose from his seat, his faceted form reflecting the chamber's lights and prismatic patterns. Ambassador Krelith had led the most recent diplomatic mission to human space, the 5th such attempt since humanity's withdrawal. Honored colleagues, Krelith began, his voice resonating with harmonic overtones, I regret to report that our diplomatic overtures have again been unsuccessful. The human government has refused all requests for formal negotiations. Murmurs of disappointment rippled through the chamber. General Korthak of the Saurian military collective stood abruptly, his massive frame dominating his section of the assembly. Then, we demand their return, he roared. We have superior numbers, superior firepower. We can force them to resume their obligations to galactic civilization. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives shouted over each other in dozens of languages. Some supported Korthak's aggressive approach, while others recoiled in horror at the suggestion of forcing humanity's compliance through military action. Zethkar activated the noise-dampening field, gradually restoring order. General Korthak, your suggestion has been noted. However, I believe we need to hear the complete report before making any decisions. Ambassador Krelith continued, while the human government has refused formal negotiations, they have provided some insights into their position. President Chen made it clear that humanity views the Council's restrictions as a fundamental rejection of their right to exist as equal members of galactic society. Dr. Lithana leaned forward in her observation seat. President Sarah Chen had been the Council ambassador when the restrictions were imposed. Her elevation to the human presidency sent a clear message about humanity's attitude toward the Council. The humans have not been idle during their isolation, Krelith reported. Our intelligence sources indicate they have made remarkable technological advances. Their industrial capacity has increased exponentially, and they have developed new propulsion systems that exceed anything in our databases. This news sent another wave of unease through the assembly. If humanity had advanced beyond galactic technological levels during their isolation, the power balance had shifted dramatically. More concerning, Krelith continued, is evidence that humanity has made contact with species beyond our galactic region. Long-range sensors have detected ships with unknown energy signatures operating near the Sol system. We may be dealing with human alliances that extend far beyond our current understanding. The implications were staggering. For centuries, the Galactic Council had operated under the assumption that they represented the most advanced civilizations in the local galactic region. If humanity had found allies among even more advanced species, the Council's position had become precarious indeed. Counselor Yathana of the Celestial Communion rose, her ethereal form shimmering with nervous energy. Ambassador Krelith, did the humans provide any indication of what it might take to restore relations? President Chen was quite specific on that point, Krelith replied. She stated that humanity would consider resuming limited cooperation only if the Council formally acknowledged that the restrictions were unjust and apologized for the damage caused by humanity's forced withdrawal. The chamber fell silent. An official apology would be an admission of responsibility for the current crisis. Several species that had strongly supported the original restrictions would lose significant political standing within their own governments. Furthermore, Krelith added, President Chen made it clear that any future relationship would be based on mutual respect and equality. Humanity would not accept a junior partnership or restrictions on their development and expansion. General Korthak snorted derisively. So they expect us to grovel for their forgiveness and, then, grant them special privileges? I say we demonstrate what happens to species that threaten galactic stability. With respect, General, Dr. Lythana stood and activated her speaking privileges. I believe you're misunderstanding the nature of the threat we face. Zethkar nodded for her to continue. As the galaxy's foremost expert on the infrastructure crisis, her opinion carried significant weight. The data clearly shows that humanity was never a threat to galactic stability, she explained, activating her technical displays. Rather, they were essential to maintaining it. Their innovations, their problem-solving capabilities, and their cooperative nature were the foundation upon which our modern civilization was built. She highlighted specific examples: the navigation networks that guided merchant ships, the early warning systems that protected colonies, the research collaborations that had advanced every field of science. Without humanity, we're not just losing technological capabilities, Dr. Lythana continued. We're losing the ability to adapt and grow. Other species, including my own, tend to develop deep expertise in narrow fields. Humans had a unique gift for synthesis, combining knowledge from different disciplines to create solutions that no single species could imagine. She paused, letting the implications sink in. The question isn't whether we can survive without humanity. We've demonstrated that we can't. The question is whether we're willing to acknowledge that fact and act accordingly. Counselor Vashti of the Psion Collective projected a wave of skeptical emotions. Dr. Lythana's analysis assumes that humanity would actually help us if we apologized. But their behavior suggests they're more interested in punishment than cooperation. I disagree, Dr. Lythana replied. Humanity's willingness to provide emergency technical assistance proves they still care about galactic welfare. The Proxima Nebula incident, the Rigel Prime atmospheric crisis, the Tau Ceti evacuation, in each case, humans provided solutions when lives were at stake. She brought up records of the emergency interventions. They're not trying to punish us. They're protecting themselves from a relationship they perceive as toxic and exploitative. The debate continued for hours, with representatives arguing every conceivable position. Some demanded military action. Others suggested economic sanctions. A few proposed simply accepting the collapse of galactic civilization as inevitable. Finally, Zethkar called for order. We have heard all perspectives. The time has come for a decision that will shape the future of every species in this chamber. He activated the formal voting protocols. The motion before us is simple: should the Galactic Council officially apologize to humanity for the unjust restrictions imposed 2 years ago, and formally request their return to galactic society as equal partners? The voting process was agonizingly slow. Each species had to consult with their governments, debate among themselves, and consider the political ramifications of their choice. Dr. Lythana watched the tally board as votes were cast, modified, and cast again. In the end, the motion passed by a narrow margin. Barely 60% of the member species voted in favor. It was enough to make the decision official, but the lack of overwhelming support suggested that the galaxy remained divided on humanity's role. The motion is approved, Zethkar announced. I will personally lead a delegation to Sol System to deliver our formal apology and request for renewed cooperation. General Korthak stood one final time. This is a mistake. We're showing weakness to a species that already holds too much power. Mark my words, we will regret this decision. As the assembly dispersed, Dr. Lithana remained in her seat, contemplating the magnitude of what had just occurred. The Galactic Council had swallowed its pride and admitted that it needed humanity more than humanity needed the galaxy. But would it be enough? The damage to trust and relationships ran deep. Humanity had been burned by galactic politics once before. They might decide that isolation was preferable to risking another betrayal. 3 weeks later, the delegation returned from Sol System with humanity's response. President Chen had accepted the Council's apology but made her conditions clear: humanity would resume limited cooperation, but on their own terms. They would help stabilize critical infrastructure and provide emergency assistance, but they would no longer subordinate their interests to galactic politics. Most importantly, humanity announced that they were expanding beyond the galaxy entirely. Their new allies, revealed to be ancient beings from another galactic cluster, had offered them opportunities that made local concerns seem provincial. "We're not abandoning you," President Chen's recorded message explained. "We're growing beyond you. The galaxy taught us an important lesson about the dangers of dependency. We won't make that mistake again." The galaxy had been given a second chance, but the relationship would never return to what it had been. Humanity would help maintain the civilization they had helped create, but they would no longer be constrained by its limitations. In the depths of space, human ships began their journey to distant stars, carrying with them the knowledge and creativity that had once uplifted an entire galaxy. They left behind technical manuals, training programs, and automated systems designed to preserve what they had built. But they also left behind a warning that would echo through galactic history: cooperation must be freely given, not demanded. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. And those who seek to control the future may find themselves left behind by it. The galaxy had learned its lesson, but at a cost that would be felt for generations to come. Humanity's departure had indeed been the final warning, not of their danger to galactic civilization, but of civilization's danger to itself. In trying to control their greatest strength, the galaxy had nearly destroyed its own future. The empty chair in the council chambers had been filled again, but the scars from its absence would remain forever.